Hello, listener, and welcome back to the Road Back Home podcast. I am delighted this week to bring you a conversation with a lady that I only recently met and very briefly, but I was blown away by the presentation, the keynote speech that she gave on the day. Her name is Michelle Mills Porter, also known as the People Reader. Michelle is an expert in human behavior. I won't give away too much about why she is an expert in human behavior, other than to say that Michelle experienced something quite profound in her lifetime that, as she said, was like, being restored to factory settings, complete reset on her life, and gave her an insight into what drives people and the absolute essence of a person, when all comes to all. And one of the things that she said in her talk, I mean, besides her having a very strong presence, stage presence, which caught my attention first off the bat, her message and her presentation was so powerful. I don't need to tell you about it now because we talk about it at length in this episode. But she said, everybody, she knows it in her bones because she's lived it. Every single person has something to offer. Everybody has value. Everybody has something to bring to the table. And just with that hypothesis or that proposition, she had my attention because I know that I am often, I have amnesia when it comes to my own value. I have amnesia very often, and I know I'm not alone in this. There are those of us who just, for some reason, have blind spots around our greatness, Like if you were to ask me about my deficits of character, my defects or flaws or imperfections, I will list them off. I know them. I never forget them. I never get amnesia when it comes to all the ways in which I don't measure up, all the ways I don't have, what it takes. And I do struggle. And I know I'm not alone in it, in remembering what I do bring to the table. So any discussion around that is always of interest to me. Anyway, I'm not going to waffle on too much more. If you want to, which I'm sure you will want to connect with Michelle after this episode, of course, all her links will be in the show notes. And as she says in this episode, she encourages you to reach out, find her, message her, let her know that you've heard this conversation, because I know it was a very different conversation for Michelle. And I'm so grateful to her and to anybody who steps into this space in which I am very curious and very probing in terms of what's the guts of this, and who are willing to kind of go with me and humor me as I meander around and have a good, look around the inner workings of this with my curiosity. So I'm grateful to Michelle for being so open and willing to dive into this with me. And I hope you enjoy the conversation. Michelle Mills Porter, you're very, very welcome to the Road Back Home podcast. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here, Amanda. I'm loving our new friendship.
Yes, me too. So a little bit of context for our listener that I met you recently at a professional speaking event, and you were the keynote speaker. And first of all, you have a very a very strong presence. You have some charisma. But I had no idea, who you were there or that you were there to speak. I obviously hadn't done my homework, so I was just like, oh, hi, hello. And then when it came for you to go and speak, when you came on the stage or in front of the room to speak, your presence instantly again is commanding. And I found myself sitting up because I was like, I want to, and maybe because we discovered afterwards that we're both, rock stars in our part, in our former lives. And maybe I saw that in you and I was like, this person is just command, how to command a stage or whatever. But anyway, so many things struck me about your talk. First of all, there was you and your presence. Secondly, it was the idea that you were presenting to us. which we will talk about. And it was the idea of collaboration, but more than that. Your talk is named Collaboration Evolution. Thirdly, then there is your own personal story and experience of how you came to this, offering as such. And then there was, on top of that, what happened inside of me, inside of that room, when you handed it over into action. It became, you took it out of the presentation, out of theory, and now let's do it right now in the room. And I was like, whoa. So, going to talk about all of that. Um, I and I was dying to talk to you about it because I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And I think that is that what you want as a speaker, by the way? For somebody to just be so curious and moved and be like, I need more.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's a little bit more than that. The serendipity we're going to talk about today, Amanda, is going to make people's toes curl in a good way. It's going to give you shivers down your spine and goosebumps all over your arms because the serendipity is incredible. What I was delivering was the president's keynote. So, as the president of the PSA UK and Ireland, it is my job to come up with a theme and to spread that theme to every region within the PSA, all 14 regions within the PSA, including the fellows. And what I decided to do is not just a president's address, but actually turn it into a workshop that brings collaboration evolution, my theme, to life. And in order to start that collaboration process, I handed over an exercise which was a reciprocation process that says, what can we put, what can we bring to the party? What can we put in the pot? What are we willing to give of ourselves? And what do we want to receive in return? And that hopefully will start that collaboration process going.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get there. First, Michelle, you call yourself the people reader, am I right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, first of all, people say, "Oh, the people reader, are you reading me?" And I always have to say, "Well, are you paying me? Because if not, jog on."
Oh,
Um,
that's a great answer. I must remember that.
It's so the thing about the people reader, I started off, and it's made sense now because only 3 years ago I was diagnosed with being massively ADHD, and a lot of stuff fell into place. And I go back now and look at my childhood, and I realise why I've taken the path I did. But if you fast forward to my business career, I started off as the phone genius. So my first book was called Phone Genius, The Art of Non-Visual Communication. So this is learning to communicate with people non-verbally. Um, sorry, not
Non-visually.
yeah, non-verbally was where I went afterwards. I thought, okay, I need to add to this. So now I want to look at body language, but minute body language, facial expressions, eye contact, all of those little things. So it's advanced body language. And then I developed into behavior profiling. So what we've got now is this perfect triangle of three ways of being able to read other people. And this is purely for the benefit of being able to build deep rapport, to be able to meet someone and answer any of their questions before they have to ask, creates such huge, deep rapport that you can never forget that relationship. And that's what I want to give to people.
Yes. Gosh, and such a valuable thing too, you know. I hadn't actually thought about that, about the because of, interesting, as an artist, one of the things that I would very much teach my or work with my clients on or help them understand themselves is through non-verbal communication. You know, we do a lot of symbolic work, but yeah. The other thing that fascinated me about you, Michelle, is that you are a would you use this language in saying that you were a survivor of the 2004 Stephen's Day or Boxing Day tsunami?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, I'm not really one for titles. I made it through. I made it home. Am I survive? Yes, I'm a survivor of the
Yeah.
Boxing Day tsunami. I'm not the kind of person to dine out on a tragic experience. That's not what I talk about. What I talk about is I talk about what I learnt from the aftermath.
Yes.
So I much prefer people to say, do you know what? Michelle's a human communication and behavior expert. And she learnt that through what she learnt in the aftermath of the tsunami. But,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
want of editorial space and all the rest of it, you sometimes need a title, don't you? So
Yeah.
Tsunami Survivor's okay.
Well, you were there, put it that way. You were there. And I remember where I was. Maybe a lot of people do. I remember specifically that day. And I remember being absolutely haunted by it. Like, it was just so awful. So, you know, to think that you came out of that with what you presented on the day, it was that basically to summarize, and please feel free to jump in where I am off here. You said to us in that room, because of that experience, here's what I know. I know that every single person, every human being has something to offer.
Yeah.
Everybody has something of value. And that just instantly perks my ears up. And I would rather hand it over to you to say, share with us, like, how did you come to know that?
I think the first thing I say is that in the aftermath of the Boxing Day tsunami, what I realized when I was finally kind of reunited with other people is you get to see straight through to the core of humanity. You get to see straight through to their soul, and they're laid bare, and it's a little bit like if you were running out of a burning building, you probably wouldn't have time to put your clothes on. And I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. Presumably it's in the middle of the night. I'm not suggesting you walk around naked during the day. But my analogy might be a bit weak there. What I'm trying to say is
Well, it's
that
not because I do walk around naked during the day. But anyway, go ahead. I'm only dressed because we're on camera. But continue.
well, I'm only dressed to the waist. So, yeah, no, I won't go.
Same.
The point is that what I'm trying to say is when you're caught unawares, you get to see the real person.
Yes.
And, we talk about the roles we play, the titles we have, the cars we drive. Quite often we're playing a role. But when you're in the face of adversity, and it doesn't matter what that adversity is, if something sideswipes you, you get to see the real person. And what I realized is that human beings are magnificent
Mhm.
because there is this benevolence and this compassion. And even people that you think are not very nice people, when you see them putting their life on the line for a complete stranger, it humbles you and it makes you realize that you've been judging. And that was really key for me. And to see that benevolence and compassion, I will never ever forget it. It was beautiful.
Yes. And it's such a good point is that, like, you not only is a person, let's say, stripped of their conditioning in that moment, but you are also stripped of your filter, you
Yeah.
know?
Everyone sees you for who you are, warts and all. And,
Yeah.
and that's when you show up. And that's the beautiful thing about humanity. There's been many a Hollywood film about this, but
Mm.
it's in the face of adversity that human beings are at their very best. And it reminds you that when we are back home on the treadmill, worrying about our jobs, worrying about politics, and whatever it might be, the daily toll of life, we are not being tested, where our metal is not being tested. Whereas maybe, in prehistoric times, if we've been chased by dinosaurs and all the rest of it, maybe we might have had access to that a little bit more. But we live fairly sedentary lifestyles a lot of the time, and we're not very often tested. We're quite
Hmm.
safe, apart from all the places in the world that are war torn at the moment, and going through trauma, and we feel for them, we really do. But when we're going through the mundane daily life, we forget that. That's the danger, is we forget the big picture and all the adversity that's out there, and all those people who are being tested and who are, being pushed to bring out what they can from their core.
So I want to interject here something that, here that we may not address now, because where I'm also like, well, what was the gap, or how soon after this did you take what you saw and see that there is a bigger lesson here that I want to bring to the world? Like, there is something here that, like, did you immediately connect the dots? I mean, I'm sure you didn't, because it was a very, real life traumatic circumstance. But, like, how soon after did you think to yourself, oh, this is about collaboration. This is something that people need to know. This is what I could teach people that maybe they don't know, or need to remember about themselves. Like what, how soon after that did that become a nugget that you took with you, or was it instant?
It's not it's a complicated answer because it's not one or the other. Let me explain. There was an immediate change. There was an immediate change. Something pressed my factory reset button and went boom. And suddenly I was recalibrated and I wasn't interested in the things that I thought were important to me. So, in the same way that anything that had any monetary value had absolutely no currency in this current environment, everything that I'd done for a living, the business I'd created, the 14 employees that, that was giving jobs to, the awards I was winning, it all faded into insignificance and was washed away with the rest of the water. Not important anymore. And suddenly I was reminded of the things that were important to me. And I had this recalibration of realizing that all I wanted to do was help people. All I wanted to do was charity work and discover what it was that I just learned and try and feed that back to other people. But the actual journey of how long that took for it to be marinated
Yes.
and and developed and researched and evolved. You're talking more than 15 years. So where I am now, 20 years later, I am 100% absolutely definite of my purpose on this planet, my job. And I look back and I think, yeah, of course, it was one easy, simple road. But same as anyone, you look at the journey and it's higgledy-piggledy all over the shop, near breakdown here and near breakdown there. And, it's a very, very messy journey in between.
Yeah, I do. I do understand that completely. Um, so I'm trying to figure out now how I'm going to kind of like get into this in terms of, so when you say, um, are you familiar with Johari windows?
Yes.
Okay, so for the listener who may not be familiar with Johari windows, it's a kind of a model of would we call it identity or humanity or whatever, that's separated into four quadrants. And there are, in the four quadrants, there are things you know about you that only you know about you and nobody else knows about you.
Yeah.
And then there are things that you know about you that are also known by others. Then there are things that are known about you by others, but not by you. So your own blind spots, the things that you others will observe about you that you've no idea about. And then there is the other window that is things that you don't know about you that nobody else knows about you either. Now, when I was learning about that, I was like, what the actual, like, you've just defined nothing. Like, you've just literally defined nothing. But what it explained to me at the time is it is not until you are in a situation that could not be predicted, that could not be foreseen, that is not typical, that it will be revealed to you who you are in that moment. So this is, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to jump in and say, do you know what? I'm not necessarily a fan of Jahari's window in some aspects because somebody else's opinion of you is not necessarily accurate. So,
Yes.
as a behavior profiler and somebody who's written what I believe is the most outstanding behavior profile there is, behavior analysis there is. I am a very firm believer that it doesn't matter. If somebody has a different behavior style to you, they are going to see the opposite aspects of your prominent
Hmm.
qualities and your behavior style. And there's nothing you can do about that apart from to try and meet them halfway. So actually, someone else's opinion of you is not true. And what we can do is we can damage people by actually saying, well, this person
Hmm.
says that you're this, that, and the other, and therefore you must be. So I think
Yes.
I think we have to. I mean, Johari's window is a very, very old model, and it doesn't seem to
Yeah.
have evolved very much over the years.
No,
So I
but
do.
it's a useful, let's say, setup for where I'm going, right? Because what I would think here is that what happened to me in the room when you were explaining that day, or in general, when I first was introduced to that model, it's not what other people think about me necessarily that comes up for me. It is instantly the fear that I am bad, that I am unworthy, that I have no value. That's what comes up, and that's what perked my interest when you started your talk and you lay down your proposition. Every single person has value and has something to offer. And I sat up in that room because inner, you know, my inner Oliver Twist, I call her, was listening because I wanted to know what is that thing for me. Because ultimately, and I think this is true for a lot of people, we go through life, our deepest fear being that we have nothing to offer, that we
Mm.
have nothing of value. And so, in a situation like that, I often think there's the movie Castaway. When I watch that movie, I often laugh because, let's say the Johari window of I've never been in that circumstance, so I have no idea how I would act. But my shitty self-concept will tell me that I would just walk out into the water and drown myself immediately because I would just wouldn't have what it takes to survive. I wouldn't have what it takes, right? So this idea of like the fear because what we have in our shadows is not just all of the undesirable. It is also all of our greatness. So let's move along back to your talk that you gave in that room, right? And you were presenting your hypothesis that is not more than a hypothesis. This is your truth. You're like, everybody has something to offer, and we're going to do the workshop right now. So you got two scribes and we had two boards. And you tell me, because it's your exercise. Tell us what we did, and then I'll tell you what happened. Me.
So I'll tell you where it comes from, and then what we did in the room. So where it came from was the realization that there were more than 100 people in one garden in this community in the aftermath of the tsunami. And what happened was this community was forced together, but the hierarchy was just dismissed. It was just brought to a ground level, level zero. And what that meant is it didn't matter what your title was back
Mm,
home or wherever you came from. It didn't matter what you did for a living. It didn't matter what car you drove. It didn't matter how much you earned. None of that mattered because none of it was relevant. So what we came down to is we came down to latent skills suddenly becoming more important than anything else. So we suddenly started to realize that somebody who had learnt how to build a fire in the Girl Guides was suddenly massively valuable. Somebody who had learnt how to fish with their grandfather was suddenly massively valuable. Someone who learnt how to dress a wound in the Boy Scouts, massive value to that talent. And I remember saying to John, my friend, John Goodgin, he said, Michelle, you don't look very happy today. Not happy, but you don't look very pleased today. What's going on? And I said, I don't know what I've got to give. I was like you, Amanda. I was like,
mm,
I don't know what I'm doing. I feel useless. I don't know what I'm giving. And he said to me, are you mental? Are you not seeing what you bring to this community? And I'm like, no, please tell me. Is it my medicine bag? Because I'm the only one that had a full medicine bag with steri strips in it and all sorts. Is it that? And he said, no, Michelle. He said, what you're doing is you're lifting people's spirits. So when people are sad, when they're having a breakdown, it's you that's quietly talking to them, that's making them laugh, that's building their spirits. So I said, great. So I'm a clown. Is that all I have to offer? And he said, no, Michelle, it's more than that because when somebody is down, when somebody's having a breakdown, when somebody's crying, you're the one quietly talking in their ear and you're the one that's calming them down. Now, I didn't realize, even then, I didn't realize the value of that. I still thought my value was less than anyone else. It wasn't until months later that people said to me, when we made it back, if you hadn't have been there at that time, I don't know what I would have done. If you hadn't have said that to me at that time, my kids would have seen me break down and they would have broken down and the example I set would be so less. So they were telling me that what I brought to the party was valuable to them. Now, it may not be valuable to me because for me, it's second nature. It's just what I do. And I think this is the key. Quite often, we don't value what we bring because it's second nature to us, it's easy to us. But for someone who can't do it, it's the most valuable thing.
yeah. And in terms of the audience that we're speaking to now, this is such a pain point with the women that I work with. I feel useless. I don't know what I'm bringing to the table. I don't know what I'm giving because very often they are the skills of nurturing. They are the skills of, mothering, in the sense that, it is bringing love to the table. It is bringing assurance to the table. It is very much kind of like helping, meeting people where they're at and sensing into their needs, and, and tending to people. And that tends to be not very valued in the commercial world as a
Yeah.
transaction, you know? So how does that apply? Because in that room, then, tell us about the exercise that you did. Is that what's next? Let's say.
Well, the exercise was simply saying, what is it that you want to bring to the party? What can you give that might be valuable to someone else? And it took a little time to start the ball rolling, if you remember. People are a
Yes.
bit nervous, they're not sure. But then when they hear what people are bringing to the party, like I, for example, I said, I will do an essence analysis, a core driving forces analysis for anyone who wants to understand what truly motivates them, what really puts fire in their belly, what's going to give them fulfillment. I will do that analysis for you free of charge. And then people were suddenly starting to think, and say, well, I've got something I can give. And so that knock on effect of, oh, I've got
Hmm.
something too, then all of a sudden, if you remember, after 20 minutes, we couldn't stop it. It was a rolling snowball that had gathered
Hmm.
momentum, and everyone was getting all excited with all the things they could bring to the party. And that momentum was so strong. I said, you have to carry this on
Hmm.
after the meeting, after I'm gone. You have to carry on this collaboration, this idea of allowing the space to tell for people to say what they can bring to the party,
Mm.
because you might not think it's that important to other people, but for others, it's massively important. We can't judge what's important to someone else.
Yeah. And then, of course, in that context, it was professionals that was in the room, so it's a bunch of professionals, and essentially, networking and all of that. So a lot of what was coming then to the table as well, of course, was almost like our lead magnets. So it's interesting how, like, even identifying value for a lead magnet or something, like what do I actually have as that I can package in a way that could be offered, like formalized and offered to the. And as this was all happening around me, I was panicking, completely panicking on two levels. One level was, I honestly don't know how I could contribute here, which was, I had to really not compose myself, but I had to really manage that, contain that, because there was a part of me, Michelle, that started to get really freaked out about this, just from my own, like nothing to do with, but I think it's very, common, for like to be in a room and to feel like I'm the only one here who hasn't actually got something tangible to offer. Not that for 1 second, I don't believe for 1 second that I don't have any value, but it has been an ongoing theme in my life to be kind of like be a deer in the headlights in terms of like, I don't know. Um, like I honestly don't, I'm stuck. I don't know what I could bring to the table here. I don't know what possibly um, could come from me that somebody here will be like, oh yeah, I could do with that. Now, in saying that, and anyway, it doesn't matter. Like we were at a meeting earlier on, and somebody had a problem, and I was like, I can totally help you with that. So, sometimes it's about the room, but then the other piece was because there wasn't just, well, what can you give? There was also, well, who needs something? Who has a request? Who? And then there was that as well. There was like, oh my God, not only do I not know what I can contribute, I don't know what I need. I don't know how to
And
ask
I
this room for help in a way that doesn't make it feel like it. So it triggers all of that for women, for a start, even if we can identify what we can give. How do we receive? How do we identify what we need, ask a room full of people, to help us meet that need, and then not feel like you have to sell them back or to give them your kidney in order to receive that? So I'm curious, do you see this in the rooms that you do this exercise with?
Sometimes let me try and put some answers to this because you've asked a million and one questions there. So let me take it one step at a time. The first thing I'm going to do is talk about what happens when you're not sure about what it is that you bring to the party. Let me just tackle that one, and then we can move on. And please remind me, because my ADHD brain might not remember. Remind me about the second part of that, i.e., how do we ask for what we need? So the first part, let me tell you a little story. For me, if you can't identify what it is that is of value that you can bring, think about what think about the collaboration. What kind of group of you bring? And I'm going to tell you a little story which is so minuscule and yet so powerful. And this is the phone story that I told you about. So I entered that garden with an old Nokia mobile phone in my hand that wasn't working. As soon as I got into that garden, somebody else had the expertise to be able to work with technology. Someone else had a SIM card. Someone else had a battery. Someone else, had a wire. And all of a sudden, this collaboration of people came together, and within minutes, we had a working phone with only a very short shelf life. But if you talk to anyone that knew somebody that was caught up in a tsunami or any other disaster, anything similar to that, they will tell you the worst thing is not knowing that their loved ones are okay. So we managed to get over 100 people in that garden from all corners of the planet to get one short phone call home to let their loved ones know they're okay. That one tiny connection to all the corners of the planet with that one working phone. I didn't do that on my own. I couldn't have done it on my own. Neither one of us could have done that on our own. It was the collaboration, the small thing that we brought to the party that made that huge thing work, and it reached hundreds and thousands of people around the planet in minutes.
Mm,
If you think of it like that, if you think, okay, I don't know what I can bring to the party. I'm too embarrassed to stand up and say, well, I can mop the floor or whatever it is you think is not of value. Actually, why don't you start a collaboration and say, well, if we collaborate on this, these are the little things that I can bring. Where does that fit? And then what you'll see is that when other people bring little things, you suddenly get little groups of things that are not so little anymore. We
mm,
can create something greater than the sum of our parts when we collaborate effectively. So that's the answer to the first part of your question. If you're panicking about what you can give, just talk about the little things and put them into categories and see where the collaborations can happen, because it will be a vital piece. If you think of that phone without the wire, without the SIM card, without the phone itself, without the battery, without the person with the technology experience, any one of those elements is missing, it's not going to work.
true.
My God, I've got goosebumps again.
That is such, oh, there's such wisdom there because that really tips on this. Like it actually is very moving because as I listen to that, I'm a woman in recovery, and part of the recovery is about letting yourself be helped essentially, and letting love in, learning to love and be loved. And the ongoing theme, especially in my recovery, is that, this is not all on you. There are other forces at play. Like if you allow yourself to, like, for example, the other day I had a situation where I was in a hairy spot, and my way of dealing with things when I'm stressed out is self-reliance you know? And it's about like, I have to solve this problem all on my own. And I found myself in a position where I was completely powerless and I was being driven, compelled to to do a behavior, to engage in a behavior that I don't want to do, but I was powerless. I couldn't stop myself from doing it. And then there was just this little, like, thoughts came in and was like, reach out to your people. And so I sent a message. And suddenly I've got 10 people like, call me. It's okay to call me. Do you want me to call you? Right. And all of this was happening. And then I got another idea that was like, make a cup of tea. And I made myself a cup of tea. Here's what I wrote afterwards in my journal because I did the thing which I have been resisting to do this whole time. So I was going back into this self-reliance, Michelle, and I think that maybe this has something to do because, of course, I'm always trying to take something that I saw in a room in a professional context, and I'm trying to bring it to my personal struggle and my audience's ears that say, how is that mind-blowing over in that context there? How is that also true here? And I think it's just what you said there, something to do with this self-reliance. So something made me reach out and decide, like accept that I was not going to be able to stop this momentum myself. I was going to have to reach out. So I wrote afterwards, um, because the voice of self-reliance is the one that goes, now fight it, like suffer on through, not suffer on through, but soldier through, warrior, like overcome this yourself. And then I wrote down here that this was the little, you know, breeze of an idea that said, like, I told you to send the text so that I could surround you, so that I could send my loved ones out to help. You know, I told you to make tea so that I could comfort and collect you.
Oh, that's
I
beautiful.
told you to ask for help so that I could give you time and understanding. And I was brought to tears when I realized this. I was like, oh my God, for once in my recovery, I didn't try and do it myself. I sent out an SOS, a flare. And in doing that, I received everything I needed to get through that hard moment.
It's that giving up, isn't it? It's that releasing. It's that's so poignant and so beautiful, and it's a really, really good reminder for us all. You know, we don't have to do it all on our own. Do you know it was my beautiful mum-in-law that taught me through her 10-year fierce battle with cancer, the fiercest battle I've ever seen. And she taught me that resilience doesn't have to roar because I thought resilience had to roar. It had to be about strength. It had to be about stamina. It had to be about, that's what resilience was for me. And when I'm teaching, especially young adults now, I'm saying it's not about that. Resilience is about being the grass, not the oak tree. It's about that bending. It's about that forgiving. It's about that that ability to be moved and to move and to sway and to respond. That's what resilience is.
Yeah. And that like resilience, relying on ourselves, like I can force it, like I'll make the phone work through sheer determination and but no, like I literally, it's a useless piece of plastic unless I find somebody who has a SIM card. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes you just need to top up your bucket. If you're in that situation where you're getting to overload or you cannot see for your mind saying fix it, do it, then just take yourself out and do something that tops your bucket up. For me, it's a walk in nature, taking photographs, catching the sunset, those kind of things. They fill my bucket back up and then I come back with a completely fresh mind. And I do get in my own way a lot in that, I think I've got to power through, like you said, I've got to do it, I've got to find a solution. Sometimes you haven't. Sometimes you just need to get up and walk away.
Mm, yeah. Gosh, yeah. It's just it blows my mind once I realize like what it is about what I'm hearing that's capturing my imagination that is relevant. Like there's learning for me to be had here in a greater way than what's being offered. I don't know. I just felt that the nugget of your message of collaboration as revelation is um it was worth trying to have a bigger conversation around. And you talk about human magnificence emerging through collaboration and how working together reveals that which we cannot achieve alone. Like in my experience, like they've been telling me for 18 months now, I'm sober 8 years, but the emotional sobriety, this last piece has been really hard. And they keep saying to me like, it's a we, Amanda. It's not an I, it's a we. Um, I finally am allowing that to be the case. But anyway, talk to us more about human magnificence emerging through collaboration.
I think for me, because I was very much I mean, I was described as an A-type personality by a lot of people, an overachiever. I realize now that actually there's no such thing as an overachiever, but some people just don't like people that are driven. They just don't like people that want to win awards and want to do good things and this, that, and the other. But I was very much that person that did everything themselves. It wasn't that I was unsociable, it was just that I was used to doing it. I always relied on myself, so I was used to doing things on my own. So for me, I think one of the most poignant things was the second that I found myself in Jimmy Lal's garden, sitting there in the aftermath of this tsunami with no news. We didn't even know it was a tsunami at the time, with no news, no contact with the outside world, nothing. Just a garden full of people sitting in their swimwear and whatever they were wearing when it first hit, covered in bruises and, crying their eyes out and all sorts of stuff. And I sat there and I thought there was almost a sense of relief. It was like, it's off my shoulders. I am not in control. And the sense of relief for being someone who ran a business that was responsible for all of their staff's children having new school uniforms and paying their mortgage and having that responsibility. All of a sudden, that responsibility was not relevant. And the feeling of weightlessness was incredible. And I believe that it's the feeling of that weightlessness, that taking that responsibility off my shoulders, that allowed these messages to be bestowed upon me, for me to be able to see clearly what was happening in front of me.
Yes. Oh, you know, only hours before my thing that happened the other night, that before that compulsion literally got me out of bed, dressed, and heading down to do damage. Uh, Only hours before I quit the program. I quit in a fit of rage. I was like, that's it, I'm done. I thought I was quitting the program, but I think it was actually my ego leaving the building. My ego was like, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. And it
Mm.
left. And hence, I didn't try and fight the compulsion when it came in. I just was like, lads, I'm being driven. I don't know what to do. So it wasn't my ego wasn't there to be like, you have to do this yourself. And, nobody else can help, blah, blah, blah. Like, literally, my ego just threw a strop and left. And in its absence, I discovered what surrender means.
Surrender is the word that, yeah, surrender is the word that keeps, we're skirting around it, aren't we? But it is
Probably.
surrender, absolutely. And isn't that the first rule in a lot of programs, recovery programs, is you have to surrender
We
first?
admitted we were powerless, yeah, that our lives become unmanageable. And step one is just such a hard one because, you know, first of all, on first meeting with those words, they feel like very disempowering words. But it's not until I personally had an embodied experience with the powerlessness of it, in that, like, I can't intervene on my own behalf here. Like, I am literally being driven against my own will down to do this thing that I've sworn I don't want to do. And I can't stop myself. And it's just so hard to get past that powerlessness and or to get past the control. And I guess what's happening in a room then as well, you know, that I've tried for years to be in rooms like the one that we met in, and I've never really allowed myself to be in those rooms, probably because my ego on some level was threatened because, like I said about the Johari windows, like my ego was always looking through those windows going, oh, you don't want anybody to see what's in there. Like, and just like pulling the curtains the whole time, just being like, no, 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 I don't know what's going on, and I don't even know how to say what I'm trying to say here. But sometimes like I always seem to need to have that fuck it.
My ego actually needs to have an absolute collapse. And I wonder, is that kind of like what you're saying about what happens in a crisis? Is that it literally is that the ego has no, like it cannot exist in a situation like that. It has to collapse. The hierarchy, as you say, the hierarchy is literally ego, isn't it? And
Yeah,
it
I guess
and
it is. Yeah.
yeah, and your ego is placing you in that hierarchy and reading it, and it's like a leaderboard and blah blah blah. It's always watching, watching, watching. Maybe the ego is the curtain twitcher looking out the window, going, "Nobody's going to see what's really going on here." I don't know what it is, but like, is it that like the reason that I can be in those rooms right now is because I have come to the end of myself. I have realized that I can't do this on my own. Self-reliance, even in business. One of the things I say is I'm tired of being a one woman wolf pack. And this is all new territory for me to come out here and do things, like collaboration, working with people is a very new thing for me because I have been so scared, I guess, of people as, a lot of things in me, boundaries, all of that. Well, all the people pleasing, all of that exists in my history. And I know it was the ghost of Amanda past that came up in that room that day that was like, you've nothing to offer and you don't even know how to ask. I was conscious that that came up, and I was at the same time, I was like, yeah, but we're here now. Because I had my own personal tsunami at the end of 2023, where I literally wiped out, crashed out, from pure force, pure and utter force of trying to survive and make it purely off my own effort, purely off my own back. Maybe it's the wound of having had a successful father. My father's famous here in Ireland. He's dead now. Having to, the wound of having to prove myself on my own merit. And I don't think you have to have had a successful parent to do that. I think the world or culture is designed to make us feel like that we have to prove ourselves. There's a meritocracy at play here.
But there is something very strong about vulnerability, so strong about vulnerability. I'm going to challenge you and ask you, Amanda, who the hell do you think you're serving by not allowing people to see the vulnerable, authentic you?
Oh, well,
Because only when they
yeah.
see the vulnerable, authentic you that they say it's okay for me to be me.
Well, at the risk of being misunderstood, I definitely do. I don't hide my vulnerability or my authenticity, but from a professional point of view, go
Yeah, but
like
why are
I
you
I
drawing the
believe,
line? Why are you drawing the line between professional and social? There's no line for me. Absolutely no line at all. My
yeah,
best friends become my clients. My clients become my best friends. It is
mm,
all amalgamated in this beautiful boiling pot. So in terms
yeah.
of vulnerability in the workplace, vulnerability as a speaker, if you're willing to share your story openly to others, then you give others permission. And that
Yeah.
is a powerful place to be.
I think because I don't want to knock down your challenge. I think what you are inviting me to do that I hadn't considered before, it's only coming clear to me now from our conversation, is that I have probably compartmentalized the professional and the personal as two separate things. And there's probably a wounding there that I don't deserve the professional thing because, I'm supposed to, it's supposed to come about differently or something like that. I also was raised, I realize now that it was an illusion. Like we were raised with my dad's had a kind of a story, a rags to riches story, like as if um, he was a fully self-made man. I know now in hindsight that there were lots of factors at play that assisted him in the universe. My mother probably being the most significant. Like he did not get there on his own. Um, so I realize that now, but it's the narrative I think that I was probably brought up with this idea that, that it is self-made and it is a kind of like you're cheating if you get assistance, but also then bringing my um, personal self, allowing my personal self to also be the professional self. There's probably a disconnect there that I just got a sense of it, like as you were, when you challenged me, I was like, no, that's not the problem. And then I was like, hold on for a second. So I am still posing or wanting to pose professionally as someone who doesn't need help.
So here's something that has come up for me since you've been speaking in the last couple of minutes. And it's the fact that all of the tools that I've created are designed in such a way that they allow people to shine with their prominent qualities. And at the same time, it shows them their opposites, what they're really not very good at all. And what
Yes.
this does, because it's so perfectly balanced, it allows everyone to understand that you have to be able to have dark spots in order to be able to shine. And if you
Mm.
are going to shine anywhere, you're going to have something that that energy is only it's an absolute, and it doesn't go anywhere outside of that box. It has to, the balls have to rattle around in that box, and so wherever they land there is going to be an equal and opposite, and that's the way that um, all of my analyses are designed. So it allows us to be able to see where our strengths are. And I am absolutely convinced that if I was to do your essence profile and show you what truly drives you, then that's going to answer a lot of your questions, because you're screaming out to me at the moment. You have one particular driving force, which I could name right now, which I know is fighting. It's something that you believe is in your DNA, but actually it's changing whilst other things are growing. And I can see that happening. And I guarantee if I did your essence profile, we would capture that, and that would give you so many answers.
Did you say guarantee?
Yeah.
Love it. Did I not do that though? Did I not do that profile? That was that the question, the thing you sent me?
Hold on.
The 30
Oh,
question.
I just remembered. You are the one, because I did so many. You're the one where I said I'm not giving you the answer. I'm not giving you the results, aren't I?
I don't remember you saying that.
Yeah, I did. I'm going to look it up now while we talk.
Anyway, right.
I'm pretty sure I said that you are going through massive change. Did I not say that you were going through massive change?
No, no,
Oh, okay. All right. All right. I
no.
forget.
Um,
Let me look it up while we talk. Talk about
that's
something else and I'll look
Yeah,
up what I'm.
that's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna again. I want to open it up to my listeners as well. Try and show them how this also applies to them. So where I see this in other people, let's say. So an area of my life that my creativity is an area of my life that is, there's no drama. It's just there. It's a secure. I'm very secure there. But a lot of people, let's say, where this self-reliance running wild would be coming up in their creativity in terms of artistic expression, in that they believe in order to be creative, they have to have super original ideas, things that have never been thought of or done before ever. Like as if there are not other forces influencing them or assisting them in the like. I definitely have come up with people who overcomplicate creative and artistic expression through self reliance by not allowing themselves to be inspired.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess this is where I so appreciate the invitation and the challenge that you put down in the room that day, because it really was a very uncomfortable um, invitation to step outside of self reliance.
Have I got the ability to share screens here?
You can in 1 second if you already don't.
Right. The
So,
reason the reason I say that is because
yes, you
as
can.
we were speaking, I you have completed your essence analysis, and
Yeah,
I may have sent it through, but we haven't had the debrief yet. That's something that we were going to do, and I think we put this podcast in first. So
we
let me
did.
share the screens, and I'll show you exactly what I was talking about. This is what I was talking about. Now, can you see this graph which shows the results of your driving forces?
There's nothing sharing so far. I'm not seeing any screen. There we go. You're starting to share. Okay, yes.
Okay, so your driving forces are these. Aesthetic is very, very high for you. And aesthetic is all about balance, about fairness, about awe and beauty and wonder and self-actualization. It's all of that beautiful stuff. And the reason that you and I get on and got on immediately is because we share the top three driving forces. Different numbers, but exactly the same three. And what I didn't vouch for when I created this is I didn't vouch for this to be able to get two human beings who go, wow, we love each other immediately that share their core driving forces. And I never knew that was going to happen, but it did. It did. Now, the driving force I was talking about is your individualistic driving force, and this is the one that's changing. So, the individualistic driving force is the need to do things on your own, the desire to be different, the striving to find a new path, sometimes even when you don't even need it. Now, this report will show you all the benefits and all the negatives of this driving force. And it's this driving force you were speaking about just a few moments ago. The
Yeah.
social one that's not about how sociable you are. The social is your need and desire to give back to society, to be benevolent, to give your time and your energy and your worth to others. Those are your three top driving forces. I cannot wait to go through that debrief with you, because that's going to give you so many answers. I could see it singing out of you the second that you said it.
And how very Enneagram 4 of me to excel in individualistic temperament. It's just so Enneagram 4 is all like, I must be unique and special. It is literally what no man, like I must be an island. I must make an island of myself. Anyway, this is all
Hold
fascinating
on,
stuff.
hold on.
Yeah.
Stop. Benefits of individualistic are they are the change makers in society. They are the entrepreneurs. They are the fire starters. Don't you dare dismiss your
Oh,
individualistic.
no, I know I do. I do value it, I must say, but also it is exhausting. When you're unaware, when you don't know what you're working with, it's exhausting. So yes, this is all about awareness. So yeah, this is so fascinating in terms of moving out of self-reliance into into what you call collaboration evolution. Like, is this a path of evolution then? Is that what you're saying? Is that collaboration is how we're going to evolve?
Yes. So for me, and this is where I talk about the serendipity, it's 20 years since the tsunami that I stepped up as national president. 20 years since those lessons were bestowed upon me, although it took time for me to shape them. 20 years since those lessons were bestowed upon me, that I needed the very same lessons to put our association back together following the biggest adversity we had ever had. And 20 years to my national theme, which is saying, let's call for action. Let's understand that if we want to fight against those negatives in the world, whether it be war, whether it be politics, whether it be, dissolving the DE and I whole thing, sector, we have to stand against it and say, no, this is not the end. This is the evolution of what we need to do. Is we need to stand in collaboration, and we need to put that effort together. We need to put that energy together and make sure that society does not take steps backwards. And it doesn't matter in what genre you talk about, it's happening in pockets all over the world, whether it's, the sorry, I'm waffling now. What I'm saying
You're
is,
actually not. No, you're
okay,
not.
but it's happening all over the world. And when you see these little pockets of synergy, you realize how important it is that as human beings, unless we learn to collaborate effectively, we are never going to win. And if we do learn to collaborate effectively, we will always win.
Mm, gosh, it's when I get back to the idea of the podcast's name is The Road Back Home, and it's based on a poem that I wrote, also called The Road Back Home, and it speaks to the journey of recovery as being a road back home to our, myself, ourselves, whatever. But I'm seeing now also how this is a collective, a call for the collective to return home to ourselves, like we must come back home to collaboration, to community, to working together, to understanding that, a village is composed of many and is greater than the sum of its parts. I get it now. Like, I get what you're saying and how it applies to, and it's literally it's the message of recovery. It's like, that's the 12 steps are we, not I admitted I was part of, we did it together. We do it together. You don't do this on your own. It's about learning to love and be loved, as they say. Michelle, thank you so much. It was
We could talk all day, couldn't we?
We absolutely could, and it's there really is such a deeper truth of message here. There's a like a deeply profound message here, which is why your talk just hit me in like the spiritual gonads. You know, I was just like, what? Um, and I'm delighted. Thank you so much for coming on because I really did want to unpack it a little bit more with you.
It's my absolute pleasure. I can't wait for the debrief meeting we have, because this is a story that has only just started.
100%. And tell us where people come from, because I know people are going to be fascinated. Like, where do they learn more about you?
I'm the only Michelle Mills Porter on the planet, so it's not hard to find me. Reach out to me. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me on Facebook. I think I said this last time we met. The biggest kick in the spiritual gonads for me is to not follow up, to not connect with me. I like to feel needed. I like to feel wanted. Who doesn't? You
Yes.
know, so please reach out to me. There are so many people that said, "Oh, I was going to reach out to you, but I thought you'd be too busy."
Yeah.
What? The most important thing to me is relationships. Please reach out.
Well, I will put your links below and make that easy for people, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.